If you're a wine fan, then you'll know that there's a couple names in the wine world that can just command a premium price. In the wine world, one of the oldest names that has done that is Saint-Émilion. So I'm standing in front of a historic chateau in Bordeaux, France, a place where they've been protecting their brand for centuries. And it's not just about the wine they're protecting, it's the entire identity of this region. And it is so ridiculously complicated how they got here. It's a bit insane, actually. This place does have a lesson for every entrepreneur, artist, small business owner, medium business owner, global business owner who has ever poured their life into building something that could become a brand. Because if you don't have a plan for brand protection, you're leaving your brand to chance. I'm Samantha Bradshaw, small business and trademark lawyer, and today we're not just talking about protecting your logo. We're doing a deep dive into the fact that a registered trademark can be your secret weapon for, frankly, making more money. We're going to see a couple success stories, dispel a couple myths, and draw inspiration from the protected names that drive value in this part of France near Bordeaux. For over 5,400 hectares and 1,200 years, Saint-Émilion has built a global reputation. This city dates back to the Roman times and was significantly shaped by Benedictine monks in the 11th century. After this 8th century hermit decided after Santiago that he wanted to, chill here. So this is a brand literally for the ages, right? And shows us the enduring power of origin and consistent quality and what that can really mean for any product or service. Louis XIV even recognized the wines of this region as the nectar of the gods. King John of England created a wine brotherhood just to protect this region because he was kind of obsessed. So this appellation d'origine contrôle, sorry, my French is terrible, the AOC for red wine in the Bordeaux region has existed here since 1936. And just like the protected designation of this region signifies that guarantee of quality and origin, builds trust, allows you to charge, I've seen bottles here for $3,200. Your registered trademark allows you to build that same kind of foundation. It guarantees the origin of what it is that you're selling, the quality that's associated with it. And that protection unlocks a multitude of benefits that can directly fuel your growth and profitability. But in order to talk about all that, we need to go back to the office. Now, back there in Saint-Émilion, we see a bit of a paradox. We have a world-renowned name intrinsically tied to that town, and yet it's legally super weak as a trademark. See, Saint-Émilion itself, obviously, is its own town. It describes where the wine came from, and in wine world, that's crucially a part of the description of the wine. In trademark law, locations are also seen as normally descriptive, and in wine world, location is descriptive. We don't allow in the US Patent and Trademark Office for these things to be protected, so they had to come up with a different system. In France, Saint-Émilion is protected as a geographical indication, or GI, which you can see on the wine bottles by the AOC details. Let me see if I can find one real quick. There we go. So this one's from a small town right next to it called Margaux. We know that this came from not Saint-Émilion, but actually the town right next to it. So it's really important to know that they don't get to call themselves a wine from Saint-Émilion because they're not actually from there. It's a huge protection strategy for them. And most bottles of wine that are from an area like this are going to include the AOC details on them. What does that mean? It means it's a collective right owned by the group of producers that can't be sold or transferred. Your wine has to come from that region or you don't get to use this. This kind of old world system, it ties the product's identity directly to its origin. It's a whole mastermind dedicated to making sure that the brand identity, those regions, isn't just a promise. Under this system, the names like Saint-Émilion are protected as designations of origin. These laws ensure that if you buy a bottle labeled champagne, for instance, a more commonly known one in the United States, you're getting sparkling wine made in the traditional method with grapes from the Champagne region and specific kinds of grapes. This system makes sure that you know exactly what you're getting, not Prosecco. It protects the product's quality and the collective right, and makes sure that anybody who uses it is agreeing to go around it in the way that the producers decided. It's an IP right recognized at an international level. First, let's back up and talk about what a brand actually is. What any of this really means to someone who isn't, a trademark lawyer. It's more than just a name or a logo. A brand is the overall identity of your business. And the cats have appeared. It's your personality, it's your values, it's the emotional connection that your company builds with your customers. And a strong brand, really, it builds trust, fosters loyalty, and in the case of this, even justifies premium pricing. It's the promise of a very specific quality or experience. And your trademark is how your customers identify that experience comes from your company. It's the tool that gives you the exclusive right to use that selling the thing that you're doing. So nobody else can come and sell in the same space, in the same industry. It also gives you a legal recourse to be able to go after anybody who tries to copy that name, logo, slogan, and the trademark brand is frankly a hugely valuable business asset. It increases the value of your company. It makes it easier to expand through licensing or franchising or create jurades that help protect your entire wine region. It makes a new product launch easier because your audience already trusts you. It allows you to do the new product launch through a partner instead of having to go through the logistics of the whole thing yourself. But there is a pretty big difference in how we use trademarks in the US and the AOCs that I'm telling you about in the EU for wine. In the US, we use trademarks to protect the brand's identity, regardless of where it came from. These protections in the wine world are very much about protecting the individual businesses, their specific identity, the regions, and making sure that we understand that these things are protected. That's why a term like champagne can be legally used by other producers in the US as long as they don't claim it came from France. If you're unsure how your name stacks up, we do have a free trademark quiz and the link is below in the description. It takes all of 15 minutes to do and you can do it from your couch without actually having to talk to a lawyer. So let's talk about how Saint-Émilion as a geographic indicator would fare in the US trademark system. The United States takes a wildly different approach. While the EU protects GIs with a dedicated system, the US protects them under its own existing trademark system. Daisy, are you gonna say hi to everybody? Okay. There's a lot of options, especially in the beverage world for this, but generally, if a name merely describes where something is coming from, it's considered a descriptive mark, and that's a problem with the USPTO. Those normally aren't registerable on our main register called the principal register, unless they get something called secondary meaning. But the US Trademark Act does allow geographic names to be registered as certification marks, even if they're primarily geographically descriptive, like Roquefort for cheese or Parma for ham. For wines, AVAs like Napa Valley primarily define a geographical region for labeling purposes, but unlike the AOCs that exist on these bottles, they offer much more flexibility and they're not quite so strict. For wines, we have those regional claims, but and we can put them on labeling, but they're super flexible, they're not very restrictive, and they're not necessarily going to tell you a lot about the specific grapes, yields, a specific region where it came from. So building something this big, this detailed is obviously going to take a while. They've been at it since the 8th century. With all of that time, all of these reinforcements, the bell tower is secure now, but that's a lot of time. The trademark process also can take a really long time. When we're doing your initial search, it's like carving into this limestone. An initial search, before we ever file, before we ever put one stone on top of the limestone, we're making sure that it's a strong foundation to build on. Because every time we create a weakness in the layer, we create an option for that tower to be able to topple over. We don't want that to be your business. We want you to have the foundation that allows you to grow, not worried about the weakness of a vaulted ceiling when you're putting however many tons of stone are on top of that, right? But the trademark process does take about a year and a half for most people. Getting the process started now means that probably in next year or the year after, depending on what time of the year you're watching this, we might be able to get to that bell tower. So thank God it doesn't take 1,200 years, but it does take 12 to 18 months. So it's a good time to go ahead and get started. Now, we've just talked about the US trademark registration process typically takes over a year. It's already a significant time investment, and you need to know now if your name is even worth the effort. So this whole system, descriptive, generic, what does it all mean? It's what we would call trademark distinctiveness. Words, brands operate on a spectrum, and within the eyes of the USPTO, not all names are created equal. On the spectrum, there's strongest to weakest. And your job as a business owner is to aim for the strongest end of that spectrum so we can make sure you've got a brand that flies through the USPTO system without more resources than you need to put in. And if you want me to walk you through the process that we walk our trademark clients through when they have a brand that we agree isn't worth registering, check the other link in the description below to request a video that will show you how to come up with one of the most trademarkable names that we as a firm can help you recommend. I'm not your marketing guru, I'm not your SEO person, but we can make sure that it's trademarkable. So, talking about the spectrum. On the weakest end, we have terms that are really unprotectable. Those are generic. These are simply the common names for goods or services themselves, like bagel shop for a store selling bagels, pencil for pencil store. Yes, even the cute customizable ones. These terms can never be trademarked because the US Patent and Trademark Office thinks that that name should be available to anybody selling that thing. We can also overuse a brand name to the point that it becomes generic. Things like escalator, aspirin, Xerox. And then next we have descriptive marks. Normally these are not protectable initially. Remember what I told you about location names in the United States? This is going to suddenly start making more sense. These are names and brand names that directly describe what it is that someone's selling, a quality, a characteristic, or a function of it. For example, creamy for yogurt, soft skincare for a beauty brand. These are generally not going to be registerable with the trademark office unless you can prove something called secondary meaning. Essentially, that consumers have come to associate that term specifically with your brand over a pretty significant period of time. This can be a long road, at least 5 years. Holiday Inn is an example of a hotel in the United States that eventually acquired secondary meaning. It was an inn that people took their holidays at. Or Seattle's Best Coffee. It's literally the coffee in Seattle. But let's talk about a trademark that combines both the US system and Saint-Émilion. Specifically, there is a registered trademark, meaning the US Patent and Trademark Office said okay at one point in time for Saint-Émilion Macaroon Co., presumably short for company. And what they claimed they wanted to be the only person selling in that name in was bakery desserts and, well, you guessed it, macaroons. This is a key distinction. Most brands want to be on the primary register because it comes with all the support and all the fun of the USPTO. This one in particular was put on the supplemental register because nobody's thinking that, these macaroons are coming from that Saint-Émilion. This company wasn't in Saint-Émilion. They were trying to evoke an idea of France and what that meant. So it wasn't descriptive in that exact sense of this is where they're coming from. So it's more of geographically suggestive for a product that wasn't actually from Saint-Émilion, but it still wasn't a strong enough mark to be put on the primary register. They're like, you know what? Prove to us, we'll let you have this. You can go on the register for now and tell everybody that you're using the little R in the circle, but prove to us that your community starts associating these macaroons and baked goods solely from you and not from somewhere else, and then we'll give you the big go around. All right, so we're warming up with my coconut water and strawberry. The next strongest idea that we can have is something called suggestive marks. These hint at what you do, but don't, spell it out. They require a little bit of imagination from the consumer about what it is that you're selling. So for sun tanning product, the idea of a brand called Copper Tone, because we're helping you get a little copper in color, I have to explain it to you. Or Blu-ray for, high capacity data storage back when DVDs were apparently no longer enough. For a multi-passionate entrepreneur, the name Story Spark. For a course on content creation is also suggestive. I'm not telling you exactly what I'm doing. Most of the time, these are going to be able to be put on the main registration with the USPTO. If you want to figure out where your brand falls on that spectrum, our quiz walks you through this step by step, and you can find that down below in the description. Now, getting even stronger, and the stuff we generally try to aim for, is something called an arbitrary mark. These can be common words used in an unexpected or non-descriptive way for plenty of goods and services. The biggest one that everybody knows about is Apple. In no way, shape, or form do you think apples have any relation to the tech that Apple produces. These are great because as long as nobody else is using them already, they're really easy for us to register and make sure you get to be the only one doing it. And now the gold standard, our favorite one, is a fanciful mark. It sounds real fancy, I know, but that's not exactly what I mean. It means they're invented words with no meaning outside of the brand, and they're created specifically to function as a trademark. We see things like Kodak, Google, Exxon. These are the easiest to register because who else is coming up with a name that doesn't exist? And do not translate it from another language because that's not going to work either. USPTO translates things when they come in. Now that we know where your name is in that, is it worth the wait? And the reason I explained to you the spectrum is because it depends on where you are in that spectrum. It also depends on how far along you are in this business. The closer you are to fanciful or arbitrary, the better off we're going to be with the registration. The cheaper it's going to be for you to get through. Faster it's probably going to be for you to get through. That being said, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, a clearance search is going to be utterly crucial. Before you even start applying, making sure you've got a solid clearance search to see if there's somebody else out there using a similar name does not have to be exactly the same. And your Google search and searching your state's registry for business names isn't going to be enough. It has to check for identical, anything confusingly similar, anything spelled in a different way, translations of it, ideally in all your key jurisdictions, all the countries where it is you think you might want to sell. If red flags pop up on this, it may not be worth moving through the process for you. So it can save you a year of waiting and a lot of potential legal headaches and bills. If you're thinking the international market, this is such a huge part of your growth strategy that making sure that you're investing the time and effort into getting a strong, protectable trademark is going to be worthwhile just to prevent those future issues. If you're coming from the US, looking at something called the Madrid Protocol to take your US trademark internationally, or using your non-US trademark to help enter the US is going to be more proactive, easier protection, and generally much cheaper than trying to enforce something later that you haven't set up the protections for before. All right, is it clear to you now where your brand name, your company name, your primary service name, the thing that helps your customers know that it's you selling them something, falls within this spectrum? Because the higher you are on it, the better off we're going to be. Saint-Émilion understands that establishing and defending the legal designations that it's built around the wine to protect its here are crucial to making sure that they continue to stay relevant in the modern era for a global brand. It's also crucial for your brand as it enters the US that it sets up the same foundation. Fortunately, you don't have to establish the system. You just have to play into it before you arrive.